Hello and welcome one and all back to Hazbin Hotel. I reacted to the first episode of this show several months ago, back when it came out. However, shortly thereafter, I had some personal issues where I kind of fell apart a bit, which resulted in this channel falling into relative disuse. And now I'm back and hoping to hit the ground, maybe not necessarily running, but at least at a brisk walk. So remember to like the video, hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment, subscribe if you are new to the channel, but otherwise let's go ahead and jump right in. However, if you are somebody who's watching the full version of this video and not just the highlights version, then I have some things to talk about. Back when I watched the first episode of this series, I had a lot to talk about after the episode was over, and I ended up having to even make notes and rewatch the episode before I fully felt comfortable giving all of my thoughts and opinions. And even then, I ended up having more things that I wanted to talk about. So I normally don't do super long, rambly things before episodes. I try to save all of my long-winded nonsense for after episodes. I do have some leftover notes here from way back, when I watched the first episode of the show, and I just want to get these last few thoughts out there before we move into episode 2. So, before we move on, let's go ahead and harp on about episode 1 briefly here, particularly something else comparing episode 1 to the pilot. Um, and this is going to be basically just me reading old notes, so sorry if it seems a little stilted, but it is what it is. So I think I realized a bit more why it feels so different going from the pilot to episode 1 of the series proper. And it's because despite the characters still being relatively expressive in their faces, it definitely didn't feel, to me at least, like they were as alive as they were in the pilot. It just didn't feel quite as real or genuine. But I didn't feel like it was necessarily because of the animation or the different voice acting. There was something else that felt off. And after rewatching things, again, this was after rewatching months ago. I've rewatched it again since then, but these are old thoughts that I just want to get out. After rewatching more and more, the conclusion that I think I've come to is that the characters feel more contained. So in the pilot, part of what made everything feel so crazy was the fact that the characters felt like they could do pretty much anything. Whereas in episode 1, I noticed that most of the time characters feel like they're kind of rooted to their place in the scene. It's like they have a bubble that they're not allowed to emote and that they're allowed to emote and act within, but that they're not really supposed to leave. So what am I talking about here? Let me try to give some examples that I think will sort of demonstrate what it is that I mean. In episode 1, towards the beginning, there's a scene where Charlie and Vaggie are talking with Alistair about the first draft of the commercial. While the three characters utilize different aspects of body language throughout the scene, and the VAs do a pretty decent job with inflections and such, if you feel like something is missing, consider how the characters are positioned in the scene. Charlie and Vaggie do not move from their spots on the couch, though Vaggie does end up standing up at one point on the couch before sitting back down. Alistair moves from the TV to the mantle and then back again, but doesn't really deviate from that clearly designated pathway until in a later scene he apparates to a new location and then stays standing in that one spot. Contrast this to a scene in the pilot, such as when Charlie meets Katie Killjoy, and there's just a whole other level to the fullness of the scene. Katie's jerky movements are capable of changing the camera angles and even transitioning us to a new scene. She's able to get in Charlie's face and intrude on her spotlight and focus to shift the dynamic of the movement. We are shown information and tidbits in the background that are directly tied to conversations that are playing out. It's not just that more things are happening, it's that more things are happening that feel natural and as if we're just following the characters around trying to keep up with everything. I don't think it's hard to see that by comparison, many character interactions in episode 1 feel stiff and the settings feel rigid. I think this is also probably why, when we got to Happy Day in Hell, I thought it felt more like the pilot. Because as Charlie leaves the hotel, we don't see where she's going, what she's doing, or who she's going to see. The world actually feels alive for that sequence because it's untethered in a way that much of the episode outside of that simply isn't. And then getting a little away from last episode and more into this episode and expectations for this episode, something that I want to see, if not in this episode, then hopefully the next episode, is Charlie grappling with a line I brought up a line that I brought a bit of attention to rather, when it happened. But I want to go out of my way to highlight it here again. During Hell is Forever, Adam sings, "For those of us with the divine ordainment, extermination is entertainment." Interestingly, they didn't show Charlie's reaction to this line. They showed her on screen at multiple points throughout the song, but not during that verse nor immediately thereafter. I think what I said at the time was, oh, that's concerning to say the least. Because for us as a viewer, it serves as a very obvious and immediate roadblock for Charlie's agenda. However, if you stop to think about just how serious this statement is for Charlie, this revelation is incredibly significant. For her plan to work, not just the specific implementation of using the hotel, but the base premise of rehabilitating sinners to allow them into heaven, she kind of needs some degree of cooperation from heaven. Even if they're not wholeheartedly backing and endorsing her plan, I have to assume they need to at least be on board with the concept of some of Hell's denizens joining them at the pearly gates. I have to assume that some kind of permission needs to be given in order for them to be let in, reformed or not. And if Adam's stance on sinners is reflective of heaven's overall position, I frankly think that interaction should leave Charlie somewhat distraught. I don't think we saw that at the end of the last episode because in universe, the character maybe needed time to process what happened during the meeting, and above table, it probably would have been a weird place to leave things off for the first episode. However, as we get into this episode, I do want to see an explicit recognition of how this new information affects Charlie. I don't expect her to completely shut down or lose all of her motivation. I think she's too optimistic for that. But I think if this is either not addressed at all or if it's brought up and then largely glossed over, then it'll most likely feel like they dropped the ball with what I feel should be a major point of contention. What's more, I feel like interrogating this matter could potentially lead us to some other threads to be covered over the course of the season. For instance, the severity of the problem that Adam's position presents is directly proportional to how widely it is shared among the other angels of heaven. The fact that there are enough angels participating in an annual extermination tells me that he's not exactly a solo agent, but there is a distinct possibility that there are conflicting factions, so to speak, regarding this issue of overpopulation in Hell. There's honestly a lot of different avenues they could explore with this, some of which could be really interesting. So again, I'm hoping this wasn't just some throwaway line for the song and is very much intended to kind of tease the tensions that are to come. Speaking of throwaway lines for the song, let's go ahead and move away from that more grounded and level-headed analysis and real quick just cover something a bit sillier in the sense that it's theory crafting of wild ideas from things that can reasonably be assumed to not have deeper meaning. So, one of the ways that Adam describes sinners and their situation during Hell is Forever is he says that they boil in the pot, quote unquote. On initial viewing, I didn't really think anything of this line. It was just a line that worked in the context of the song. However, as I listened to the song more, and I really like the song, so I have listened to it several times since first watching the episode, it occurred to me that I don't think boil in the pot is any kind of expression or saying that I'm familiar with. The thing that naturally comes to mind is cooking, like boiling water or some other kind of base as part of making a meal. Not surprisingly, when I tried to Google whether this was some sort of turn of phrase that I happen to be unfamiliar with, the only results that really came up pertained to cooking, not really any kind of linguistic expressions. Which then made me wonder, is something feeding off Hell and its inhabitants? There's even a visual of Adam stirring a pot of stuff, and then Charlie climbing her way out of it. And I don't know. I don't think this was actually meant to hint at anything necessarily. I don't think that it's going to become a legitimate part of the plot where we have some grand cosmic level threat that's currently being appeased by the status quo of heaven and hell. And were this balance to be disrupted, then the established order upset, then it might herald the end of all things or anything of that nature. I don't think that anything like that is in the cards, but it did make me think. It did make me wonder. The more that I heard that, the more that I kind of thought about it, and yeah, it probably wasn't supposed to make me think these things, but it did. So as we move forward with the rest of this season, that will be something that's at the back of my mind. And if we get any other subtle nods to some sort of reality-threatening entity looming on the horizon, I will be jumping at the chance to add on to this wild little crack theory of mine. With that all being said, those are my thoughts from back when I watched the episode 1 when it aired. And I think we can go ahead and move on from that to get into more present events. So, let's go ahead and get into episode 2 of Hazbin Hotel, starting in 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, my throat. Okay. Not exactly an anime OP, but we do have a bit of an intro here. This was also in episode 1. Just, I guess, to remind folks what it is they are watching. So, how many stages of grief did she just go through in the span of a minute? Who is blowing up his phone? Can you blame them? His boss. So we can use this to our advantage. Anything. Yep. Including the ludicrous notion of redemption. Cue someone showing up on the doorstep. Oh, this guy. Not who I was expecting. Who are you? Who? The who? Okay, thank you, Nifty. Ha! Nobody important. Oh, I'm sure that sure we're gonna hear to the contrary. Oh, who are you? Oi toy. Wait, subtitles ruined it. Okay, well she just kind of said it too. Okay. His boy toy is Angel Dust's boss. Oh, speaking of Angel Dust, nice poster. Meaning what? Oh yeah, that's dude's just actively mind controlling what? The overwhelming majority of hell? Oh, he's cool. Maybe? Didn't expect to be. Didn't expect it to be switching over to a basically whole new group of characters in the second episode. Whoa! Uncalled for. One on the right, left. His right. That one, yeah. Wait, this guy's in charge? Technically? Fair. Someone that I think is going to get under your skin. Yep. Saw that coming. Oh, he's tweaking. Oh, somebody's lost their cool. Oh, he's toying with this poor guy this time. don't don't touch the outfit. We need a wall. Angel, please. Fox. I love the way he glitches out on TV, by the way. Alistair. This sounds like the start of a musical number. Let's hear it. Very interesting style for this song. Oh my word. Loving this. Oh, short circuited. Oh, I definitely wasn't feeling that song in the very beginning of it, but oh, did it get better? Oh, something. I was gonna say I don't think Angel Dust is the double agent you're looking for. Oh. Oh, what? Were they out knocking on doors all day? Uh, she just punched him in the face. And also, a week before that, you don't know his name. Oh. She hurt his feelings. Hey, bartender. Sorry. Clearly. He's just here for free room and board. Oh, he seemed disappointed. Interesting. Oh no. Oh, she remembered his name. Nice. Oh, he remembers you now. Be afraid. Apologize. Yep. Okay. I was gonna say, don't leave out the coat. That's the important bit. I Maybe. Oh my word. Even she played along a little. Oh, what are they doing now? What is this? Maybe this is. Maybe Charlie's hopeful optimism is rubbing off on me, but I could actually see this guy getting like I could actually see him stopping being a double agent and just being like, I like it here. I like what they're about. Like maybe he's just good at like maybe the character is just meant to be good at acting, but he seems like he's actually having fun. No, it's all. But however, it's very interesting to see that Angel's like actually kind of torn up about this. Is he like actually trying? Oh yeah, this isn't an abusive relationship at all. Oh god, too real. Whoa. Where did fat nuggets come from? Oh, he's gonna see, and they're probably not gonna believe him. Yeah, and they're gonna assume that Angel's the bad guy here. Ah, he's slurring his speech. They're gonna be like, "You're just drunk." Oh, okay. Oh, wow. I like how Vaggie came down in in nightwear, but still with a spear at the ready. Oh, this got real Disney real quick. I guess that's to be expected for Charlie. Where did he get those? Oh my god. Those two being on the same page, dangerous. This legitimately feels like it's out of a fucked up Frozen. Oh, Nifty is something else. Oh, the taunt. Okay. That was episode 2. Let me just check real quick. Make sure there's no after credits thing. Doesn't look like it. I didn't expect there to be, but where I watch a lot of anime, I just always need to check that that's not something that I'm missing out on. um that episode felt really good. That was a really good episode, I think. It not all so where do I start? Not only did that episode do a lot of good things, but it did some of the things that it did well were things that I had issues with in the previous episode. So like at the beginning of this video, or at the very least at the beginning of the extended full length video, I don't know if that whole rambling nonsense is gonna make it into the YouTube version of this video. Probably not. But one of the things that I talked about was how from the first episode I was carrying over kind of a discussion that I had at the end of last video, which I did several months ago, which is that part of what made this feel different and not quite as good, in my opinion, as the pilot was that in episode 1, things just felt like really constrained and just like things felt way more stationary than they needed to be, especially in comparison to the pilot, which was like things were all over the place in the pilot. Like, that's what made it feel so chaotic and so frantic, and just like that's what made it so high energy was the fact that things were just everything was all over the place. Everything was all, like so many things were just always happening. But then in episode 1, like everything just felt so tame. And this episode was very much not like that. There was a lot more movement. There was a lot more kind of dynamic action. There was a lot more uh, of like scenes intruding on each other, if that makes sense. There was a lot more characters like moving, not just in certain spots, not feeling like confined to certain movement patterns, but a lot of characters like moving through space in a way that felt like they were actually moving through the space. And that was just really good to see. This episode felt a lot more like what I would have wanted the show to feel like. This episode felt a lot more like the pilot, in my opinion, and in a good way. That, like, to be clear, that is a good thing that it felt more like the pilot, because it had more of the, more so than the first episode. It had more of the energy that I wanted to see from this show when I heard that it got picked up. It's what I was looking for. It's what I was looking for in a lot of really good ways. And then to touch on some of the other stuff, like Alistair, I don't know if I explicitly stated in the last episode that he was my favorite character. I know I talked about how I like him and I like characters like him in the last episode. I know that I did that, but I don't know if I explicitly said, like, even with the limited amount that we've seen of these different characters, I don't know if I said, like, he is still already my favorite, even despite the limited time that we've spent with them. But he is. And this episode just I'm ready to double down. I'm ready to double down on that this episode. I absolutely love what they are doing with his character. He is, again, the way that I described him in the last episode, and I think it still is fitting, is he is a trickster god character. And I love trickster god characters, and I feel like in I feel like they are currently still very much doing justice to him in filling that kind of a role in the show. And that's just as long as they keep doing that kind of stuff with him, I'm just going to continue loving his character. And then we also got these other characters with Valentino and Vox this episode, and it's so interesting. Like, it's not that I wasn't expecting there to be factions. I feel like for various reasons, I kind of was expecting there to be like differing and conflicting factions within Hell and within the show as a whole, because not only in Hell we also have the Angels, and there may end up being multiple factions among the Angels, but that's getting away from things. Angels were not the focus of this episode. We were focusing much more on Hell. And just but the fact that we were already shown in in episode 2 a bit of what these other factions look like with the V's was just unexpected, and but it was super cool to see. And not only seeing these characters, but also seeing these characters in relation to our characters that we already know, who are kind of, presumably like our main group of characters. Like, and it's not just Vox's very obvious rivalry with Alistair, but it's also like the way that Valentino and also Vox talked about Charlie, like just the way that the way that we got a very immediate perspective on like how some of these other powerful players and influential figures in Hell view Charlie as Lucifer's daughter, and just like seeing again, just so seeing like the way that they view her is just something that it's adding a lot. It's adding a lot very quickly to the world and the kind of potential dynamics that are going to be at play in the show at later points in time. So that was really nice to see. And then also, speaking of unexpected, so I didn't voice every single thing that I thought was going to happen as we were seeing certain things play out, but I did voice one or two things. And by the end of this episode, some of the things that I voiced and some of the things, admittedly, I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong or was mistaken about something. Funnily enough, in keeping to a small extent with some of the lessons that Charlie was trying to impart on Serpentius, some of the things that, even if I didn't necessarily find the time to vocalize them, some of the things that I was thinking about, directions they could go, or ways that certain elements of the story they were showing us were going to play out, by the end of this episode, already turned out to just not be the case. Things were already shown to not be happening exactly the way that I was expecting, and kind of in keeping with something that I brought up. It was in regards to a different topic entirely, but something that I brought up last episode regarding a specific point, but again, a different point, but irrelevant. The idea was that I didn't want to see them do a certain thing predictably. And again, talking about different points now, but even still, I don't like when media are super predictable. I don't like because if something is predictable, then it's often boring, in my opinion. And like that's not to say that like cliches and tropes and things like that are inherently bad. That's not what I'm saying. But if I'm like watching the first 5 minutes of an episode of a show and I can already tell like how the next 10 to 15 minutes are going to go, that's just bad, in my opinion. I don't want that. I don't want to watch media like that. And it's not that they necessarily did anything like super, brilliant or incredibly unique necessarily, but just some of the ways that they just kind of twisted certain ideas and the way that they chose to allow certain things to play out in this episode were not what I had initially expected or anticipated. And I was just really glad with how a lot of things transpired in this episode. I don't know, just the way that, again, like, so Serpentius, like, it did see it. So seemingly it was the case that he was just acting. He was just trying to gain their trust. But then when he tried to do the bad thing and deceive them, he immediately got caught. And so that was unexpected. Then he got caught by angel dust, and I thought, oh, they're gonna think that, Angel Dust, because he's such a sinner and he's not actually taking this rehabilitation seriously, like they're not going to trust him, they're not going to believe him. But Angel Dust didn't find out what Serpentius was doing and then go get Charlie and Vaggie. He confronted Serpentius and he got violent, he got physical with Serpentius. And then Charlie and Vaggie showed up and it's like, oh, here comes the misunderstanding. But no, there was no misunderstanding. Angel Dust was actually just like, if he's so good, if he's actually taking this seriously, like, what's this? And, you know, he points to the camera and they're like, oh no, this guy's a twat. And Vaggie was ready to execute his ass. And so that was kind of unexpected. And then, you know, Serpentius, he didn't try to play it off. Instead, he's immediately calling for help. And he's like, you gotta get me out of here. And they just, and then the way that they turned it into, like, you know, then they turned it into like, you can take this serious. And so I don't know. It's just, there were a lot, I don't know. There was a lot of things about this episode that I really liked. I really thought were good. And part of it was the way that things happened oftentimes unexpectedly. The one thing that I will say as kind of like a caveat to this, kind of like a bit of an asterisk, is, what do I want to say? If the one way that I think that they could kind of make this bad, they could kind of like unravel the compliments that I'm currently giving here to the way that they chose to execute on this, is if this is like a double fake. Is if like Serpentius meant to get caught in order to then gain trust as like, okay, no, I showed up with bad intentions, but now you guys have given me this true hope that there are people who care after, you know, the person who sent me here forsook me. I think that's how that conjugates. So like now I'm actually bought into the premise, and yeah, so that if that turns out to have been part of the plan all along, and he then double crosses them a couple episodes from now, and it's and it turns out that, you know, like Vox wanted him to get caught and then wanted him to, yeah, like I think would be bad. I would not want to see that. I would very much not want to see that. So I hope it is kind of like, I hope it's kind of what I initially said, but with extra steps, where Serpentius does turn out to just kind of want to be a member of the Hazbin Hotel and be working on redemption and rehabilitation and whatnot. I think this could be fun. And then I can't end this video without talking, you know, I'm talking about things that I liked about the episode. Even if I don't have anything super insightful or any kind of, you know, vast technical knowledge to comment on, I have to mention the song. Not the song with Charlie and Serpentius at the end, but the song with Vox and then Alistair. The solo into duet into solo on the other end of things. Like the way that Vox, again, at the very outset of that song, like you could probably see it in my face, and like the fact that I wasn't saying anything, like I was very tepid on it, very trepidatious as to like, okay, is this actually good? Because like, do people like this song? Because at the moment I'm not feeling it, but it definitely turned up as it continued. And I'm not a music person. I've mentioned it before in other videos. Like, I'm not a music person, but the something about like the style of Vox's singing, I just thought was really cool. I don't really know how to explain it, but like, because like when it started out, like part of what I didn't like about it was like it didn't feel very melodic and very rhythmic, and there wasn't even like rhymes necessarily. But then like as it continued, like it was almost like he started speaking more confidently, but he wasn't really singing. He was kind of just like speaking more like with a bit more like charisma, honestly. And then also the lyrics started being like more so actual lyrics, but he still wasn't really like outright singing, which was really interesting. and I thought it was cool. And then again, just the way that they kind of like the way that that song then blended into a duet, an adversarial duet with Alistair, and eventually Alistair then kind of overtook Vox and was by the end of it, it was like, look at me, this is my song now. That was just so cool. And again, like you could see me just like I think you could probably see in my reaction if I had to guess. I'll notice during editing, but like if I had to guess, you could probably see me just falling in love with what was happening during that song the longer it went on. And so I really like that. It helps that Alistair again is currently and probably is going to continue to be my favorite character. That definitely helps, but it was also just a really cool way to give us more of their dynamic because again, prior to that, like we saw very obviously that Vox like didn't like Alistair. We saw that side of the relationship very clearly before the song ensued. But then seeing them like actually go at it throughout the song, it just kind of like it paints a better picture of like the exact standing, I guess, between the two. And I don't know, it's just a lot of really cool things, a lot of really cool things. And I am I am very much excited about continuing the show now. Like after episode 1, I was a little lukewarm. Like I liked the first episode. Like they like I is I when I said after the for finishing the first episode that I did like it, even though I had my issues and my and you know a number of criticisms about it. Like that wasn't a lie. I did like the episode. There are some videos on my channel where you know if you've watched enough videos on my channel, I will say if I just like outright didn't really like something. but but this episode just felt so much better. And like I was a little lukewarm on the series. I was a little concerned that it might not hit as well as it might not hit as well as I wanted it to. It might not hit as hard as I wanted it to. After last episode was my concern and my worry. But after this episode, I I feel much more relaxed. I feel much more confident in going forward with this series, and much less concerned that I need to that I'm gonna need to like look hard for things to like about the show because this just felt so much better. If the rest of the show feels more like this episode than like last episode, we ain't gonna have problems. And also, I guess actually something else to say real quick is I don't want to try to make too many predictions or think about like claim or like make claims that I don't necessarily have the information to be making about Angel Dust's character, but I do want to say that what we saw from him in this episode with the way that he reacted to certain scenes and then also the solo time that we got with him in his room, I think that how do I want to say this? I think the show is going to be taking advantage of the fact that it is a proper serialized TV show now, and it is going to be engaging in more depth. Like one of the kind of complaints that I had again last episode is that some of the characters, like Angel Dust, actually, funnily enough, didn't really feel like a full character. Even just comparing like episode 1 to the pilot, there like some of the characters just felt like kind of shallow. They felt almost like caricatures of themselves, and I was worried a bit that some of the characters, possibly many of the characters, were just gonna feel kind of hollow and like they weren't really like fully full and they were gonna feel shallow. I just was worried that the character depth and breadth in this show is just going to not be super robust. But what we saw here in this episode, again, specifically with Angel Dust, who was the character that I had the biggest problems with in the previous episode, I think I am also feeling more confident in the belief that they are probably going to do a better job than I had previously thought in fleshing out characters, in making characters complex in giving them kind of in giving us a kind of nuanced look at their personalities and the ways that they think about themselves and the way that their personalities and their lives and their histories, their backstories, so to speak, play into how they handle themselves and how they grow and how they develop. So yeah, just overall, if I haven't said it enough already, I just thought this was a really good episode, and it is really making me look forward to what is to come in episode 3, 4, etc. for the rest of the season. I am really looking forward to the rest of the show now. I was looking forward to watching it before, but like it was a little bit more of a shrug than any kind of like actual genuine excitement to an extent. But now with this episode, like I'm very much breathing a sigh of relief, and I'm very much now I am very much excited to continue, and I hope to do so very soon. So, with that all being said, remember to like the video, remember to comment on the video, remember to do all of the good engagement stuff for the YouTubes in order to help make the channel and everything more successful. And with that all being said, until I see you in the next one, take care. Bye-bye.